has mastered this.
Oh, good.
A big one that is often of concern to sellers is about their existing tenant and communication with them, and will the tenant just vacate? And I don't think we've had one who've vacated, but I think it's genuinely just about the communication. I hear horror story after horror story of a for sale sign going up and then that being the first thing the tenant knows about a sale. And of course, they're then concerned about their home. You know, of course, they think they're going to have to leave. And of course, they're straight on Rightmove looking for a new house. And then the outgoing landlord, isn't it? We would all do the same.
100%.
And actually, the outgoing landlord's just lost their rent flow. And acquired a council tax bill because it's going to sit empty. So, yeah, I think this communication with the tenant, I think, is absolutely critical. We often we don't have a script as such, but we have a number of things we'll run through with the tenant. First, it's obviously keeping them informed. Critical to let them know that the property is advertised with the tenancy included.
Yes. Big thing.
Yeah, so that they're aware that any buyer knows they are there and that they have rights under their tenancy. So that's something we would first be looking to explain to them. But I think the big thing that we try and pitch is if you're a tenant of a property and this property is being presented for sale with tenants, the tenant is sort of part of the offer. And if we can demonstrate there's a reliable, sensible tenant who wants to stay, that it's an opportunity for the tenant because they meet the viewers. If they present themselves to the buyer well, they can build that new relationship. They can have a relationship with the incoming owner that they want, and they can start that new landlord-tenant relationship off in a productive manner. So I guess we're trying to say to the tenant, this is an opportunity, not something to be afraid of.
Yeah.
Engage with the process. Meet those buyers. Present yourself well. Maybe explain you might want some investment in this, that, or the other in future years. But for tenants to engage, there's an opportunity for them as well. And I think once it's pitched in that way, I don't think we've had one tenant who's moved out during the sales process because they get this handheld sort of communication model.
Yeah, and let's be honest, well, if someone is looking to buy a property with a tenant in, they're expecting instant rent coming in. And if that tenant then leaves and they've got to then advertise the property, go through that process, there might be a void period right at the start that they didn't want. So, I think by you doing that service enhances the buyer's satisfaction as well.
Yes.
So, I think it's a great thing to do.
It's just critical, I think. I mean, the last thing you want is just the tenant running away. But I've spoken to many potential sellers who are very reluctant to proceed to sale because they don't want to upset the apple cart with the tenant that they've got. And it can take quite a bit of reassurance. But I think done properly, I mean, I'm sure Lewis will say this when he's doing tenant references. People will probably come forward for houses and it's my landlord selling the house.
Honestly, I'd say a solid probably 80% of my applications are people saying either my landlord's not doing maintenance, my landlord isn't communicating with me, my landlord's selling the house, or anything along those lines. And a lot of the time, it's a complaint of the landlord. Yeah. It's not a situation of they want to move, it's just the landlord's not doing something.
Yeah. And the sales ones, they probably can stay, it's just badly communicated. So they assume they can't. So this is definitely a big tip for me about how the tenant's handled in the process. But the tenants should be part of the. I think if we're presenting a tenant property for sale, the right tenant becomes an asset as well as the property, because you're right, the new landlord gets a business on day one, and if it's the right tenant, it's part of the bundle, isn't it? It's part of the reason to buy.
I think it becomes bigger than the property, to be honest. I think it's a bigger asset to have a good, reliable, strong tenant that you know's going to, say, pay on time, is going to stay there for X amount of years.
Yeah.
I think it's because that's the reason you're doing it, isn't it? To get that rental figure. So that's more important than the actual. So I think it's more important.
They are integral to the deal, aren't they? So it's something we're sort of careful of, really. And you know what? It's actually not rocket science. It's really not rocket science. But I do see it being done badly.
Me too.
Yeah, it has pretty catastrophic effects, because I suspect a tenant who's obstructive will reduce your achieved price because they'll restrict viewings. They'll present themselves badly. They'll probably speak ill of the former landlord. All these things, but it will just drag the bids down because potential buyers are going to be put off. So we want to flip that on its head.
Yeah, but again, this is why I'll give you a bit of credit here, Andrew. Actually, but this is, because you've got such a strong lettings background, that's the form, like the front of your mind is the letting side. So you're conscious of all those things, and you do actually make sure it's done. Whereas some agents that are just purely sales don't have the same mindset. So I think where you're coming from is a much better place for landlords to look to sell than just a sales agent. And
well, thank you. Well, I'll pass that on because I will say the team do the hard work for us. The model is there, but I want it because there are others who deliver it, but it is important because, to be fair, the last thing we want is to push the tenant out. It just makes no sense.
For no one, no person in that transaction at all is benefiting if the tenant isn't there.
Not at all. No. So that's a big one. And then this has become more and more prevalent over the last few